When it came to movies this weekend, I had a difficult choice to make. I could have either gone to see what looks like a very generic paint-by-numbers and boring Gerard Butler action movie, or I could go see a Japanese giant monster movie. Actually, knowing me, that wasn't a really hard decision to make. Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for Shin Ultraman, the 37th Ultraman movie, holy crap, and a reboot of the original 1966 TV show. The plot to this movie is as basic as you can get. A bunch of giant monsters start making appearances all throughout Japan, so a special task force has been set up to monitor these creatures, the SSSP. However, things start to take an interesting turn when a giant silver man pops up who fights some of the monsters, and this attracts the attention of aliens from outer space. And it turns out that this silver man, dubbed Ultraman, is an alien himself and is here to defend the Earth rather than invade it or attack it like all these monsters and the other aliens have been doing. If you've been subscribed to this channel long enough, or if you know me personally, you know I am a lifelong Godzilla fan. Okay, I got into the franchise when I was 8, but I can't remember a period of time before then where I wasn't into the Godzilla series. But as much as I love the Godzilla franchise and am obsessed about it to an unhealthy degree, I've actually never watched Ultraman. It's not that I thought it looked stupid or lame or whatnot, because I'd be a hypocrite considering a lot of the weird stuff the Godzilla series has produced, but it's mainly because there's so many iterations of Ultraman, so many shows, so many movies, that I didn't know exactly where to start. It's like with Star Trek. There's so many shows that it just felt a little intimidating to jump into that fandom. But even though I haven't watched Ultraman beyond a few clips and parodies, I do know the basic history of Ultraman because it's tied to the Godzilla franchise through Eiichi Tsuburaya. I'm also not oblivious to how big of a phenomenon Ultraman was in Japan, because Ultraman is the direct inspiration for Jet Jaguar right here, and there have been so many other shows that have come out in the wake of Ultraman, like Spectre-Man, the Japanese Spider-Man, Super Sentai, which in America is known as Power Rangers, and Zone Fighter, which actually starred a few Godzilla monsters, including Godzilla, Gigan, and King Ghidorah. So again, it all circles back to the King of the Monsters. And with this movie right here, it's from the same creative team that made Shin Godzilla. Even though Hideaki Anno didn't direct this movie, he wrote the screenplay, he produced it, he's a co-editor, and one of the many cinematographers on this film. The actual director is Shinji Higuchi, who co-directed Shin Godzilla with Hideaki Anno, directed the 2 live-action Attack on Titan movies, but for me is more well known as being the special effects director for Shusuke Kaneko's Gamera trilogy. And I thought, you know what? I love Shin Godzilla. I think it's the best movie in the franchise since 1964. So this would be a perfect chance to actually get into Ultraman and see what it's all about. And after watching Shin Ultraman as the first thing I've seen from beginning to end in the series, I hate myself because I thought, where have I been to where I just completely forgot about Ultraman, because this is awesome. It really is like watching one of the more goofier Showa Godzilla movies, like Ebirah Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, and Godzilla vs. Megalon. And that's pretty much the tone of this movie. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's absurd, it's bonkers insane, and I loved every second of it. One of the things that helped make this movie as bonkers as it is the cinematography. Now, I talked about the cinematography in Shin Godzilla, how every frame of that movie is almost like a work of art. Well, this movie is that, but cranked up to 11. There are some absurd shots in this movie where I'm like, how did you get this? Or what was the reasoning for framing this shot the way it is? I loved it, but I know it might be a little too out there for general moviegoers, especially American moviegoers. I also really enjoyed the characters. Basically, it's a smaller group than the special task force that was assigned to study Godzilla in Shin Godzilla. There's only 4, maybe 5 people in this group, so you get to know them on a more personal level. You get to know their quirks, their personalities, movies, they are a ton of fun. The actors do a good job at giving these characters a lot of personality, and it never made the movie boring for me. The action scenes are also a lot of fun, whether it's the giant monsters destroying things, Ultraman fighting them, or Ultraman just doing unbelievably bizarre things. I was never bored, and it felt like I was watching an old Showa-era Godzilla movie, but with CGI instead of suitmation and models. And yeah, the CGI looks like garbage a lot, but you have to take into consideration that CGI in Japan is not at the same level as American films. Like, this does not have the budget of a MonsterVerse movie, and if you want a comparison to how much this movie cost, let's look at Avatar: The Way of Water. An incredible looking movie costs somewhere between $300 to $400 million. Shin Ultraman costs between 800 million to 900 million yen. And if you translate that to US dollars, that's probably, if we're going to take the 900 million yen into account, that's about $7 million. That is a microscopic budget, so I'm not going to fault the movie for the CGI looking the way it does, because the over-the-top camera work, absurd nature, and the likable characters really keep this movie intact for me. If I had any criticisms about it whatsoever, I think the movie starts to drag when we get near the end. It's almost like, come on, let's wrap this up already. I mean, I was never bored, but the reason I felt that way is because the plot is a mess. It feels like they took about 3 to 4 episodes of the TV show and just stitch them together. When you watch this movie, it feels like every 30 minutes there's a new threat that happens, and then right before the new threat comes in, the previous threat is eliminated. Now, there are a few things throughout the movie that keep it tied together, so it doesn't feel like 4 completely random, unrelated episodes stitched together. But I really did find the structure of the movie to be really weird, and there are a few points where I thought, oh, that was a quick movie. It's over. All right, time to go. Oh, no, it's still going? Okay, fine. Let's see more of it. Because of those negative elements, this would be one of those situations where I'd normally say the movie is good but not great. However, there's something about watching a giant monster movie made in Japan that makes me feel all warm inside. Only the Japanese could make a movie this insane, this over the top, and this out there and get away with it. Now, I'm not saying American filmmakers can't get away with a movie like this, but I feel like not a lot of American filmmakers have the courage to make a movie this bonkers. So it made me feel warm inside, and for that, I'm actually going to say that Shin Ultraman is worth seeing in your lifetime, but with a caveat. If you're not familiar with Japanese giant monster movies or the tokusatsu genre in general, but you want to see Shin Ultraman, you have to go into this knowing the type of movie that you're going to see. It's going to be bonkers. It's going to be weird, over the top, crazy, and there will be several moments throughout that'll make you laugh hard just of how absurd it can be. For example, the Japanese Prime Minister and other government officials are just so casually willing to accept that aliens are here. They're like, okay, here's an alien. Nothing weird about this at all. And they even make fun of a certain trend in Japanese giant monster movies where they give these monsters weird names at the snap of a finger. Like, one character asks, how did you come up with the name for this monster? And the response is, it was just an impulse. I mean, that's the kind of movie you have to expect going into it. But if you know for sure that this is not your thing, then don't waste your time. This movie was tailored for fans of tokusatsu and Japanese giant monsters. It's not as accessible the way Shin Godzilla was, where Shin Godzilla, yeah, it was weird and out there at points, but at least it had a social commentary on what was going on in Japan 12 years ago. So there's at least some sort of reality. I mean, as real as you can get with a giant radioactive dinosaur that shoots lasers out its back. But with Shin Ultraman, it's really an acquired taste, as my friend Sean Chandler said when he reviewed it for Fantastic Fest. So I personally love the movie for what it is, and it's really making me want to see episodes of the original show, because if this is a proper interpretation of what that show is, then I've got some catching up to do. And there you go, that's my review for Shin Ultraman. I hope you enjoyed it. And now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.